Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the town of Pelham Council for Monday, September 16th, 2013, to order. We will begin with an invocation and the national anthem led by Councillor Papp. All rise.
Let us bow our heads. Lord, give us this day your strength and courage to do your will. Grant that the members of this council demonstrate humility and listen with an open mind, and show wisdom in all of their deliberations and matters of business placed before them. Bring to this council honor, trust, and dignity to work on behalf of all the people of the town of Pelham. And as well, I would ask us that we pause and think of all those victims today in Washington, D.C., who were once again matters that I heard yesterday of a famous quote from Gandhi: "When will the madness ever stop?" Thank you. O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy sons' command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Councillor Papp. Thank you all. Next is the approval of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Kirsty, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the agenda for the September 16th, 2013 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that members need to note. Do any members have any conflicts? Can that be so noted that no member has a conflict? Thank you. Next, we have presentations and/or delegations. We did have a presenter scheduled this evening. He's not here with us, so we will continue with the agenda and perhaps invite him to a future meeting. Also, a report of Regional Councillor Brian Beatty. I note that Councillor Beatty isn't here either, so if you'll allow me to give a very brief report on some of the goings-on, I guess, at Niagara Region. I wasn't prepared for this, so I'll do my best here to get back to some of the items. I will be as quick. We did have, interestingly, in our Public Works meeting on last Tuesday, we did have a development charge hearing, where actually under the Development Charge Act, somebody complained and we had a hearing, and that concluded, and that was in relation to the student residences in Thorold next to Brock University. We also received an update regarding the 406 interchange at 3rd Avenue, and the discussions with that, trying to get access to the new Northern Hospital facility. There was some concern expressed by residents, especially in the two schools in the area, concerned about dumping traffic off from the 406 into those areas. Also received an update on the Burgoyne Bridge and what they're doing there. In terms of corporate services, our finance committee, we did have that note, and I think this council received it as well, regarding construction employees. And some municipalities, it was determined whether they would be deemed a construction employer if they were doing projects. So council voted to ask the province to ensure that that doesn't occur, because then it would mean that all work had to be tendered by trades that were unionized. So we voted to ask the province to make that change and make that distinction. Renewed insurance. Council is also considering a new data center. The existing data center needs repairs. and are looking to expand a new data center. And then we also had the potential for some write-offs. One of them was regarding the police and writing off the debt that was owed, or the money that was owed from the casino for their special community policing. So we had quite a debate about that and deferred that decision until we get more information. At the Integrated Community Planning meeting, we did have some housekeeping on St. Catharines urban boundaries. We approved a final report on the Green Belt Plan Review, offering Niagara's perspectives to the province. So Regional Council initiated a review of the Green Belt Plan in advance of the province going through the Green Belt Plan. I think it's an excellent document, and I think we should, maybe the clerk can add that to my notes to circulate that to town council and staff, so that you can have some information about that. We also approved smart growth design criteria, clarifying that. There's some exemptions that are allowed under development charges and exemptions for certain developments to encourage it, like in our CIP area in the downtowns. The community was asking, development community, et cetera, was asking for some clarity along those lines, and that has been clarified. And then also, council endorsed, or committee endorsed, the Complete Streets Model Policy Book. We've had some of that discussion around this table. It will be shared with our council as well. But it's the idea of streets being for more than cars. They're also for pedestrians. They're also for cyclists. And there's some pictures and images and things like that to encourage complete streets in the region. And it's hoped that policy can be adopted and spread out around the region, and maybe be a toolkit for local municipalities. So those are some of the items. I guess, one other is, so those are the committees I attended. Also we did have our information session regarding the recruitment of a new CAO. That was last Thursday. I did speak to the chair's office late this afternoon that applicant or candidate has to still tell his or her employer. So we're hoping that will become public on Wednesday. Any questions from my hopefully brief discussion regarding the region? So we'll make sure we get that Greenbelt plan to you, and you might be interested in the Complete Streets piece and also the Smarter Growth initiatives. And we look forward to seeing Councillor Beatty at future meetings.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Take 30 seconds. I just read somewhere, if you don't mind, did I read they've run into a problem again at the town of Fort Erie with the race car track?
We didn't receive anything about
Yeah,
that
anything
at
at the
the
regional
region.
level?
It might be at regional council, but I'm not sure what the
Okay, I'm just
holdup or
curious.
the problem might be.
Yeah, I'm just,
I thought they'd cleared everything.
so did I.
I did hear about it on the radio, them saying that there was lands that are sort of phase 2 or phase 3 of the
Right.
project that still need some planning changes, zoning
Okay.
changes, et cetera. But my understanding is that the main portion can still proceed, the track and the viewing areas, et cetera. So it's not a major hiccup if it's a hiccup. Okay?
Very good.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, councillors. Next is adoption of minutes, and it has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor King. The following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes from the regular council meeting on September 3rd, 2013. Are there any errors or omissions with those minutes? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item is consent agenda items to be considered in block. I wonder if there's any items that members would like to lift for separate consideration. There being none, it has been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The following consent agenda items be received and approved. Resolutions of Committee of the Whole of September 3rd, 2013, and the report of the Committee of the Whole meeting of September 9th, and the minutes of those two meetings. Information correspondence, a thank you from the Janjek and Golden families regarding road work. Nice to receive. Niagara Regional Housing second quarter report to council, and the third, Niagara Region regarding the regional policy amendment 190 Sawmill Golf Course. There's also some staff reports, one regarding the status of Fire Station number 3, and 2 regarding a bylaw we have this evening, the reasons that it's required that we need to repeal and replace a bylaw regarding Tucker Construction at 550 Weber Road. Any discussion on any of those items? Questions? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if it's in order for us to make note of the name of the construction company that the Janjak and Golden families were referring to in their letter. It's an unusual letter in that it's entirely positive, and I would say that any company that is able to make that kind of impact ought to be recognized by name. So I wonder whether we can know who that is.
Sure. Mr. Mantle, can you assist us, please?
Yes, it's Gibbons Contracting from Fort Erie.
Works as well, I think, in the town.
They are working, well, they're doing the Port Robinson Road project. They'll also be working on Highway 20, the storm sewer on Highway 20, which the town is sharing the cost for.
Good. Thank you. We look forward to that. Councillor?
I wonder if Gibbons can receive a copy of that letter.
Mr. Mantle?
We'll drop one off tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Good point. Thank you. Others? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to get some clarity with respect to the Fire Station 3 report. First question is pretty simple. The map that we were given showing the property in question, there's a highlighted area in green. Is that the area that we propose to purchase should everything come together?
Mr. Tavasoli? Or who's best to answer this? Is this the treasurer? Okay. Madam Treasurer?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're currently surveying the land, and the surveyors will come up with the exact location of the acres that we are looking to procure from the owner. We are waiting for the report, the minor variance, to go through, and the NPCA to comment on the setback from the watershed at this time. Until then, the surveyor can't complete his survey for the land.
So just for clarity, it's not the entire piece, it's a portion of that.
The portion.
So Councillor, it's a portion of that green
Approximately
piece?
3 acres off the 10-acre parcel.
Okay. And the front part that's not highlighted is where the current station is?
That's right. And the principal residence and the trucking company, and then there's the highlighted portion where we will take the approximately 3 acres from the survey.
Thank you. Councillor?
And I guess the other question is, through you, Mr. Mayor, to our planning director. When one looks at the machinations that we've gone through with dealing with this property and getting permission to construct, I just wanted to understand that if this were a private undertaking, it would receive the same due consideration that we are giving to the fact that we're purchasing it as a town, other than the consent aspect.
Ms. Tavasoli?
Thank you. Almost the same, but there was a consideration based on the use that would be for safety of the community. They received in a welcoming, that's if there would be any issues, if we can resolve it. But at the same time, the impact, by the new use would be very minor. So that we consider that as a issue that we can discuss it under Committee of Adjustment, not rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
No, that's okay. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Others to that report? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. I do understand that the process is a Committee of Adjustment process as opposed to a rezoning, and
Yes.
and that it seems to be a really kind of commonsensical approach to that, which wasn't always demonstrated with respect to some other instances within our recent history. That is, it was always suggested that it should be rezoning as opposed to Committee of Adjustment. So I'm just picking up on Councillor Kersey's point that in fact that if we're doing it, it's going through Committee of Adjustment, but if a private citizen had to purchase this land and offer that he's going to put a use to it that isn't exactly within the current zoning bylaw, that it would have been suggested that he go through rezoning. I prefer what's happening now, and I would really love to think that that's the approach that's going to be taken going forward with respect to Others offers to purchase for a use that might be more beneficial than what's currently within the zoning bylaw, but not exactly within it.
So it's not specifically to this, but it sort of asks a broader question.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get an answer and from Ms. Tavasoli, and maybe it'll prompt a report for council. Go ahead.
Thank you. The issue here is that if is the use is the same category as this, with respect to the existing use, and also the use would be permitted under the zoning bylaw or not. So these two needs to be taken care of at first. Secondly, that we need to know that if the new use is a lower impact, or if the light use compared with the existing one. So that would be considered that we are lowering the impact on the environment and the area, and also is not really any major change with what is permitted. So we can consider this under zoning, instead of under zoning bylaw, as a minor change. So we need to review it and make that call. Sometimes it's not that easy. So case by case, we need to review that particular use and see what would be the impact, and also if we would like to still have it under rezoning. This is up to us, because there's a risk involved, so you might, they might put an appeal on it. So we need to be prepared for the answer.
Does that help, Councillor?
It does, and just to further comment, I think that's a major change. I mean, I know that we've had discussion of cases in the past where a proposed use that was of lesser impact and really fairly consistent with current use was turned down because it wasn't strictly within the zoning bylaw. So the approach that Ms. Tavasoli is proposing, I think, is something that we want to understand. What she seems to be proposing is that if there are these kinds of questions, that we as council may want to weigh in terms of making a decision as to whether it is or isn't within the zoning bylaw, but that in any case, on a case-by-case basis, an examination of the circumstances could result in what I called earlier a more commonsensical approach to allowing use changes which are less impactful. Excuse me, as opposed to some instances that we've experienced in the past, with a lot of emotional content associated with it by the people who were involved. So I'm really happy to be hearing that this is a direction that we're obviously going in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that it will require, you mentioned council. I'm not sure that it'll require any change from council. However, council can ask for additional information to help clarify this, because it is a little bit of a different nuance perhaps for some properties than others. Others to this for the first time? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Madam Director, I have one further question just for clarity. If we were private and it was necessary for us to go through the consent process in order to sever off the piece that we wanted to use, would the non-conforming use that currently exists on the property be transmitted or transferred to the consented property?
No, if it was consent or rezoning, it should be always, actually, the changes, use as a major change, it should go to rezoning. And major alteration to the site, it should go to rezoning. Actually, consent needs to go to region, and it would be something that be considered under rezoning. So this is simpler because it's the same category of use and also low impact. And just like to inform the council that we discussed this matter with region to know that what would be their concern if they still need to be circulated. And they said, no, in that case, we are okay. So we received some informal approval by region that their involvement is not necessary. So we did our due diligence before, and so not to put ourselves in a wrong path.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would council like some more information on this to help clarify? We had some questions on it. Mr. CAO, can we get that information at maybe our next meeting or subsequent meeting? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So we'll look forward to that information just about this, because it's not a dramatic change, but it's an important nuance, I'll call it. So thank you very much for that. Any others on that report? Okay, and to any of the other reports under consent agenda? Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, and I know we're going to talk about this a little later with another secondary plan. I was somewhat, I guess, concerned when I saw the, sure you did too, the second quarter report from Niagara Regional Housing. And I see everything's gone up. Applications have gone up, the number of homeless have gone up, and the number of people that are being housed has dropped. So it brings up the question that we'll deal later with about affordable housing and how that fits into our scheme of development, and how that we can provide, as we provide employment, make sure that people stay here and buy homes. And I just hope that, I know that both you and Councillor Beatty, this is not a good pattern. It's all I can suggest, knowing in my past of what I was dealing with. It's a steady climb. It's becoming somewhat out of reach, so it also begs the question, do we need to look at encouraging, which I know we are in some instances, more rentals? Because that seems to be, you know, if you can't afford to buy the house, then maybe you need to look at some affordable rentals. But it just caught me by comparisons from last year and this year. It's gone up quite a bit.
Yeah. Thank you very much,
Thank
Councillor, for that. And
Thank you.
I know it's something that the Niagara Regional Housing Board is looking at, and I had a briefing today about the budget for 2014, and I think they're trying to make some
Yeah.
changes to the budget in 2014 to try to address this, and a little bit more of an increase than original council asked for, but to try to address this issue. So thank you for that. It's certainly something we should keep in mind. Thank you. Anything else? Good news regarding Sawmill Golf Course expansion, so that's nice to see that letter from the region as well. Just wanted to comment on that, and now I believe we are ready for me calling the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to receiving a little bit of an information report from planning regarding that zoning C of A distinction, committee of adjustment distinction. Next on the agenda is presentation of correspondence requiring action. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. Correspondence dated September 4th from Jane Gilmore, President of Pelham Cares, be received, and the council approved the request of using the former fire station number 2 Fenwick between November 1st and December 31st, 2013 for the community food drive, subject to provisions of adequate insurance documentation to the clerk. Any discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to that community food drive coming up. The community is always very generous. Next on the agenda are reports from members of council. I have a few items here for report. There they are. Three. The first is regarding the groundbreaking for the Isaac Real Memorial Park. I had the pleasure of being along with Councillors Papp and Ribiak, Isaac's parents, Benita and Ted Real, and his brother Jacob, Mariah Buns, who put forward the proposal to the Aviva Community Fund, and Ian Fu, representing Aviva, to officially break the ground on the new Isaac Real Memorial Skate Park. A crowd was also present during this, including members of the Skate Park Committee, who had been assisting with the location and the design recommendations, and also included some very generous donors to the park were also there. The park, as you know, is well underway at this time, and I understand progressing well. It's anticipated the park will be substantially complete in 8 to 10 weeks from now, and we will plan to have an official opening at that time. So thanks to all who participated in the official groundbreaking. After many months of planning and discussion, it's great to see that the park is actually forming and coming together. So kudos to staff who are overseeing that, and all the community for coming to that event. I also had the pleasure of being at a couple of grand openings, and it's wonderful to see businesses opening or reopening and making that business commitment to our community. So participated in 2 openings lately. One is the Baggio and Parton Fonthill Pharmacy, and that occurred on September 9th. Congratulations to Larry Baggio and Ron Parton and their staff for the grand opening at the new Fonthill Pharmacy at the Log Cabin on Regional Road 20 in Uptown Fonthill. Mr. Baggio offered me a tour of their more than $800,000 renovation. Their business includes a pharmacy, a home health care, and what I would call Canadiana from the former log cabin. So congratulations on the completion of that renovation, and looking forward to many, many years of operating in that location and that business. The next was the Accelerated Health and Wellness Center, which congratulations to Mark Georgieff and Patrick Magdalena on the grand opening of Accelerated Health and Wellness Center on September 12th here in the Fonthill Plaza. It's really a new expansion of their services that they offer in St. Catharines. I asked them, why did you pick Pelham? Which is great. We're glad you're here. Why'd you pick Pelham? They said that many of their clients are from the Fonthill Pelham area, and that their business is going so well, they wanted to expand, and they wanted to expand here to be closer to their clients. They also had a bonus that former Blue Jay Kelly Gruber was there and he was actually officially cut I call it an exercise band. There's some fancy word for it that they use for exercising, but he was trying to cut through that to open the business. So it was great that Mr. Gruber was there, and also Mayor Sharp joined in to assist because Mr. Magdalena was from Welland and Mr. Georgieff is from Fonthill, so we kind of had that wonderful rivalry between the two. So congratulations on their business opening. And my last report is regarding community living of Welland Pelham. I had the pleasure yesterday to participate in what was called Jackie's Walk. It was a fundraiser for community living Welland Pelham. It was a 6-kilometer walk down the Steve Bauer Trail, linking our 2 communities of Welland and Pelham. We did make it past the construction on Port Robinson Road, and they certainly appreciated the town ensuring that there was safe passage on that through that intersection at Port Robinson and Station. And it ended with a great concert by Kindred, wonderful kind of folksy Irish band at the bandshell here at Peace Park. So thanks to all who participated. Congratulations to Community Living, and thank you for picking Pelham to have your walk and also to help celebrate your 60th anniversary. Those are my reports. Another member of council, Councillor Papp, has a report. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. This is the highlights of the meeting of the Welland Pelham Chamber Board of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce, September the 9th. City of Welland brought us up to date on a couple of major developments in the area. Obviously, the opening of their flat water center, $10.2 million, the approval of a condo development downtown Welland, and the ongoing promotion of the sports tourism and the actual flat water center and what it's attracting. As well, there was a business after 5. Unfortunately, I couldn't go, and I know, Mr. Mayor, you were
Yes,
there.
I was.
It was interesting that the Thorold Business Association was there, which have sort of formed their own group and lined up with us. Special events on the October 9th at the Fallsview Casino. The annual get-together with all the chambers of commerce will take place, and it's an ability for annual local networking and individual businesses to set up. They're sold out, and they've oversold this year. They have almost 150 businesses showing up there to promote various products of all kinds. October 18th, the Ruby Awards, the ongoing community and recognition of business and service awards. Lookout Point, once again, it'll be sold out. October 24th, 2013, the economic update of the Welland, and I'm not sure if the Pelham area, so I'm not clear whether it's going to be at Riverstone or Lookout, but this is the TD does an economic update on what's happening. November 8th is the mayor's lunch in the city of Welland, and there's booking the mayor's breakfast with you at some point in the next month and 2 months and a half. There was also a discussion about Brock University. Amy Elder mentioned that right now the university is booming, but is faced with, similar to what our friends in NHS are faced, they have a huge operational deficit of several millions of dollars, so they're doing an operational review of the whole university to see how they can balance this off without jeopardizing delivery of programs and services. I hope that they come to some resolution, because the university has just taken off as the college has. Finally, There was kudos brought to us, and I convey this to all members of council, especially Vicky and Councilor Kersey. The chamber was just ecstatic with what happened at Summerfest and how that went off, and see that as a premier event that they're very proud of, not only for the Pelham Chamber area, but the whole Niagara area. So my heart swelled when I heard them say these were people that typically, other members of business that you probably know from automotive, who came here and they said they just loved it. So keep up the good work, and that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Papp. Appreciate your report and your ongoing work with the chamber. The next section of the meeting is staff reports requiring action. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. The council receive issue summary report, proposed policy modifications to the new official plan for consideration, and the council endorse the proposed modification to policy B2.1.3.5, accessory residential uses on farm properties of the town's adopted and regionally approved official plan. And further, that council convey their support for the proposed modification to policy B2.1.3.5, accessory residential uses on farm properties, to the region, and request that this policy be presented to the Ontario Municipal Board member for consideration to be in force and effect. Discussion?
No,
No discussion?
I think it's an excellent.
this is great.
Okay, thank you. No discussion. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We look forward to hearing the results of that at the OMB hearing coming up in October. Thank you for your work on that policy. Next is has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the issue sheet report East Fenwick Secondary Plan be received and the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The council resolved to develop a secondary plan for East Fenwick and direct staff to conduct an inventory of all private sector planning and studies that have been completed to date, and negotiate with the private sector to purchase relevant plans and develop a financial plan that would allow for the completion of the required studies and planning for the purpose of developing a secondary plan for East Fenwick, and present this to council during the 2014 budget process for consideration. Discussion? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, I don't want to read, usually I don't do it. We're not really, through you, Mr. Mayor, and the CAO, the Director of Planning, we're not purchasing these studies, are we actually? Are they going to do the studies? And
Mr. CEO?
I'm not clear, because I know we went through with East Fonthill.
Right.
We had a whole series of, and I know you weren't here, there was, did they do them, didn't they do them, who paid for it, who didn't pay for it? I just want to be clear on how this is going to work.
Mr. CEO?
Can you just give me a high level,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councillor's question, the response to that is that we would probably pay a percentage on the dollar for the work already done. But we need to know what that work is, and we need to know how relevant it still is, and then we will negotiate with the private sector who commissioned those studies. And no, this is exactly what we're not, or what we're trying to avoid, is a repeat of the East Fonthill exercise, where the recommendation clearly is the town take responsibility for the secondary plan and undertake the remaining studies that need to be done in order to move this forward, and that we basically remain in the driver's seat throughout the process.
Thank you. Councillor?
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Thank you.
Others? Okay. I'll call the question. Look forward to receiving that at budget. I think it would be important as well to, as the CEO indicated, to be in the driver's seat of these studies, so that we can work together with the community as opposed to not. So, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. The council received the issue sheet report, longboarding master report, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The council evaluate the idea that a longboarding track be constructed at Marlene Stewart Street Park using the following criteria recommended by the public and any other criteria the council determines. Safety, cost, liability and cost. Does it meet the need of residents, and does it meet the need of longboarders? Discussion to this? Maybe Mr. CEO, you could give us a 2-minute or a 30-second précis on on how we got here and what's you're sort of recommending with the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council is aware, we had the public creative problem-solving process where we had about 50 members of the public attend. We broke out into 5 groups, and each group ran through the process to try and answer the question, how might we keep longboarders safe in Pelham? And each of the 5 groups drew up their own notes that were forwarded to me. And what I've done is just compiled the areas that were highlighted by each group into a master report. So this is an amalgamation of 5 different groups arriving at, in most cases, a similar or the same outcome. The public has indicated that their preference would be to see a longboarding track constructed in Marlene Stewart Street Park, and that if that was to be evaluated, the 5 criteria would be the most important to them, and that was something that council wanted to know, is how would the public evaluate a proposal, and how would that stack up with the criteria that council might come up with. My suggestion at this point is, because there isn't a number of different ideas, competing ideas, evaluation may be a little redundant at this point. I might suggest that council also consider the possibility of directing staff to conduct some more, a little bit more thorough investigation of what and how a track could be built, and then report back to council for maybe the evaluation at that point, as opposed to just doing it tonight without a lot of details on where it would be, how much it would cost. We don't know these questions, so if we found them out, it would make the evaluation easier for council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Kersey, you had some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a couple of comments, some of which the CAO read my notes over my shoulder and stole them. But that's okay. I forgive you. You're a 5 in my books.
Don't give me any ideas.
Anyway,
Out of what? Oh, sorry.
with I was at that meeting as an observer, and well, this captures the general gist of, I think, what the group's boiled down to. I think there was another layer there that we also need to look at. This report speaks specifically to the recreational use of longboards. And there was another whole layer that really wasn't explored much beyond just talking about the safety aspect and what have you, and that was with respect to the transportation uses of longboard. So I think it would be helpful for council to receive a report with respect to the whole concept of the use of boards as transportation within the community. The types of rules and regulations that would govern that use, whether it falls under a provincial statute or not, the types of enforcement that might be brought to bear. Because we had a deputation, or supposed to have a deputation tonight, that would have spoken to some of that. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a layer that we need to look at that's not here. And I certainly would concur with Mr. CAO's recommendation that staff do a little bit more background work before we sit down and start to play around with this a bit, because I don't really think we have all the answers. First of all, things like the number of users that we might, think we would attract to that facility within the community, but maybe beyond the community, and the types of costs that we might be looking at, the location, all of these sort of things. That would allow us to sort of then do a much better evaluation, because we would have all of the necessary information that we need. And we don't want to go down a route where we have either not enough information or incorrect information. So we want to avoid that pitfall. So I would heartily endorse what the CAO put forward, but I'd also ask for a further report with respect to the use of longboards for transportation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Can you comment on both elements?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The issue of transportation certainly was, as the councillor indicated, brought up. It didn't sort of percolate to the surface, because I think the people's mindset was about the longboarding as the sport, not the transportation issue. We'd be happy to include that in a report. I think that it's a fairly simple response that if a track was built, then longboarding on streets would only be used for transportation, which means from point A to point B, and the practicing of the sport of longboarding would be prohibited on all streets, as an example. So that would be the type of investigative work we would do in recommendation back to council.
Okay. Thank you. And in terms of the recommendation, Councillor Kersey suggested that we may want to direct staff to prepare a report with some of those options, including number of participants, costs, locations, those kind of things. So staff would be,
Yes.
Are there other items that would be included in that report, I guess? Or could be included?
Well, I think that we'll work through that as we talk with, we're going to want to talk with our consultants on the park, and we're going to want to look at some engineering issues. I don't know the first thing about the type of grade we'd be talking about, so there's a lot of investigation we'd have to do, and I would include all that in the report coming back to council.
Okay, thank you. Others? Okay.
Yep.
So in terms of this, this motion before us, essentially what council's saying is it wants to postpone the evaluation pending additional information. Like, I can think of 3 locations in Marlene Stewart Street Park, for instance, where a longboarding track, in my mind, could be constructed, but I'm not an engineer either, so. So in terms of the recommendation, would we postpone this and redirect it to staff to come forward with a report with answering some of the questions that have been, is that what your recommendation is?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so is there a, Councillor Kersey?
I'd so move, Mr.
You'll
Mayor.
move that? So the amendment is to postpone the evaluation pending additional information from staff regarding things like the cost, liabilities, the number of users, and the locations within the park.
And I'd also like to add the inclusion of a report dealing specifically with
Well,
use of longboard.
let's keep that.
Could that not be
separate.
made as part of the same amendment? As part of the same
included in
report?
the-
I mean,
In the same
could we
amendment?
not?
Okay, so what's the second half? I cut you off, I apologize.
That included in that report, there would be information regarding the use of longboards as transportation, and dealing with such things as rules and regulations, enforcement, provincial statutes that might come to bear, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Papp, were you going to second that? Okay, thank you. Anyone to speak to that amendment? Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. Any further discussion regarding the main motion as amended? Councillor Durling?
Just wondering a time frame on this report to come back. Is there any indication as to when we'll be looking at this in preparation for 2014 budget, or just the timing of it would be, a suggestion of the timing of it, I think would be helpful.
Mr. Senior?
I'm not writing the report, Mr. Mayor, so I defer to Ms. Van Ravensway, who'll be doing the legwork on this.
Ms. Van Ravensway, can you give us an indication of timing?
Yeah, I would hope that the report could be done by mid-October,
Okay,
So for the
or information that we get back from.
So in
our
time for
consultants.
the
in
budget.
time for budget?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
if required. Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley, you satisfied?
That's good, yeah, that's good.
Councillor Ribbiak, you said it was the same idea?
Essentially, yes, and the other question that you put forward, I think, is answered as well, and that's with respect to its relevance to the budget setting process, because obviously we're going to have to put something aside, and it'd be useful to know in the ballpark how much.
Okay. Thank you. Sounds like we'll get that. So we have a commitment to the middle of October, so that's good. Anything further on the amended recommendation? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried as amended. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that council receive the issue sheet report Fenwick beautification and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The council directs staff to complete the required engineering and submit any additional budget requirements to council for consideration for the 2014 capital budget deliberations, and that staff be directed to notify all stakeholder groups of the amended project timeline immediately. Discussion on this matter, Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, really pleased to see a report come forward that recognizes the reality of the timetable, and hopefully very quickly following our adoption of this, should be adopted, that there be some communication to the community with respect to it's our sense, the town's sense of when this project is going to start. I think that's really important, and I'm certainly pleased that that's happening. My second comment is with respect to the timeline indicated. It's a very broad timeline, and it's possible, I guess, to interpret the worst, which is that this work is going to take up the entire timeline, which would suggest that the town of Fenwick, or the village of Fenwick, would be shut down essentially for far too long a period of time. So in doing this work, my hope is that we can zero in on tighter timeframes as to when the work's going to get done, and a better sense of when it's going to get done within the framework suggested within the timelines. It would be, I think, intolerable to have a project extend all the way from February through to August. I understand there were chunks that will be done at different times. It would be really good to zero in on that, and hopefully we have the time between now and when it's going to be tendered to be able to come up with a finer schedule of events that people can count on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. You're looking for comment from the CO, Mr. CO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to the councillor's questions, the point is well taken, and certainly when we were drafting this, we didn't want to make a commitment that we couldn't meet, and at this point we can't meet a commitment, or we can't meet the commitment of shrinking this timeline. This is what we know now as being the absolute, based on the information that we have now, is the timeline. We have had a couple of telephone conversations with the engineering group and the planning group to talk about how we can shrink this down. I'm confident we can. It's in everybody's best interest. How we do it, we still don't know, and there's a couple of variables. One, we may be able to look at phasing some of the storm work in the winter, so that you do, you may do a part of Church Street, and then you may do a little bit over here that doesn't impact right down the downtown area, but it lets you start the project. There may be other options around the sequencing of installation of services. So, can you get the services in along with hydro and then build the road? And, so there are a number of things we're investigating. Perhaps the biggest unknown right now is the timeline of hydro, who has said that it takes 3 to 4 months per phase of this project. So 3 to 4 months in planning, 3 to 4 months for construction. So I'm having at this point to tell you what I know is what they've told me. So this is one of the things that Council's given us a mandate to pursue, is with hydro, and trying to get those budgeting numbers nailed down, trying to get the timelines nailed down, and then trying to get them to commit to our sequencing so that we can do this in as short a time period as possible. But I think that the general message is that there will be some additional capital required that we're working on. Two is that we want to notify the public, because I'm sure there's some angst coming into the Christmas season that we're just going to move in and start ripping up the road. And then three, provide both the committee, the beautification committee, and the residents our best estimates and best information that we have now, and then keeping them informed as we move forward to the next couple of months towards the tender process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, absolutely good stuff. The additional budget, of course, we will be looking at in the budget process, and based on the information that we receive, we will approve, or perhaps not, but it'll happen then. What's really important, I think, is the communication. That following even this meeting, perhaps a press release, some form of communication out to the community to say that 2013 is off. Mm-hmm. It's going to be 2014. Here are some general timelines. Get the message out there using every means available through the business associations, for example, to make sure that this is covered. We have a risk of a couple of things. One, of course, is businesses failing because of uncertainty and not knowing how to cope with it. But the other is I think, equally important, and that is the credibility of ourselves as a town being able to manage business. We need to be able to tell people what's happening, when it's happening, and that we follow through on it, so that people know that when we make a plan like this, it will it will be a positive thing rather than completely negative. So I really want to encourage us to communicate this as clearly as possible, as soon as possible, for the benefit of everybody who's going to be affected by it.
Thank you, Councillor. I think the CEO is taking that to heart, and I know that our communication officer is writing down that as well. So
Thank you.
we'll see to that happening when after council this evening. Others on the motion before us? Okay, so it's a work in progress. I think it is. I agree with you, Councillor. It is important to tell the stakeholder groups, the business association. There's a meeting tomorrow, so we can talk to the Pelham Business Association about it, etc. Get the word across, and see if we can tighten the timeline. So I think staff are going to be doing that as well, and let's turn this into a great project for the community. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to continued discussions about that and ultimately action. Next is consideration presentation of bylaws. Been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor King, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaws and dispense with the reading of the bylaw, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter an agreement with Stephen and Robin Kaiser, and 2, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136/1987 as amended for the property known municipally as 550 Weber Road, and to repeal and replace bylaw 3390/2013. Discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And it is moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor King, that the following bylaws have been considered a first time be numbered as follows: 3415/2013 and bylaw 3416 be now considered a second and third time and passed. The mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Durley, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaw and dispense with the reading of the bylaw, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirms the actions of council at its meeting on the 16th day of September 2013. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the following bylaw have been considered to be first time be numbered as follows: bylaw 3417/2013 be now considered a second and third time and passed, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Kersey. This regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, October 7th, 2013, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Let's take a brief from closed session. It's been moved by Councillor Rybak, seconded by Councillor, I need another Councillor, Councillor Kersey. The council adjourn the in-camera session, and council do now rise with report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. I need a seconder for this one as well. Councillor Kersey, will you second this? Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Rybak, seconded by Councillor Kersey, that the in-camera report dated September 16th, 2013, item 1A be received and the recommendation contained there be approved as follows. The council approved the performance management framework as developed by the town of Pelham in conjunction with the Burke Group, and the council directs staff to complete and implement the performance management program and to seek budgetary approval for any wage cost adjustments for 2014. Discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley, that leave now be given to introduce the following bylaw and dispense with the reading of the bylaw, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of council at its special meeting held on the 16th day of September 2013. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the following bylaw have been considered first time, be numbered as follows: bylaw 3414, be now considered a second and third time and passed. The mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Durley, the special meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, September 16th, 2013, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is,
September 16th? October 7th.
October 7th, sorry, my bad.
I'm sorry,
I thought
Monday,
that was gonna be
October-
earlier
Oh God,
tonight.
just a Groundhog Day, wouldn't that be fun?
Until they wake up and it's all over.
Same day over.
again, no.
Not again.
all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
So, the motion, we've risen from the in-camera session. The motion is now to, from
Recess.
Councillor Ribbiak.
To recess the in-camera portion until after the rest of our regular business today and continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconder to recess? Councillor Papp?
Yep.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, so we'll recess this portion and go back into closed session following council and committee. This meeting is adjourned for now. Thank you.
So get through tonight's business quick.